What is up, guys? My name is Lex. Welcome back to the vlog. First hand we're going to go over here. The entire table is doing $10 under the gun straddles. I am in the under the gun position with pocket queens. There's an early position raised to $40. I 3-bet to $200 and he makes a call. Heads up to our first flop of King, Jack, 4, 2 clubs with an overcard to our pair. I think sometimes I could be checking here, but I can also get value from a lot of flush draws, some straight draws, some ace-high hands, and even a jack. So I put out a $125 bet and my opponent pretty quickly calls. This particular player I'm playing against is fairly tight, so I definitely don't like the fact that he's calling me on the flop. And then the turn is the 9 of diamonds, which is a bad card. It brings in queen 10 for a straight. Can also improve some hands like jack 9 and pocket 9. So I decide to check it over to him, and he does not check. He bets $700. Not much I can do here with pocket queens. On a king high board and a 3-bet pot, I just make the fold. In this next hand, there's some pretty important background information that I heard before this hand that comes into play. So there's a limp, a button active player makes it $50. I 3-bet ace-jack offsuit in the small blind to $225. As for the background information with the player on the button, I overheard him have a conversation with another player from another table, and the player asked him, "Hey, how's the game?" And he said that the game was pretty tight and pretty nitty, and the players only call when they have the nuts. When I overhear him saying this, I can assume that he is going to be playing a wider range of hands and probably going to be bluffing more if he thinks that the table is very tight and nitty. I make it $225. The straddler cold calls, and the active player on the button makes a call as well. So 3 ways to a flop of queen 10 7 rainbow. I decide to bet here $350 with my gut shot and overcard. The player in the under the gun position decides to fold, and now the action is back over to the active player on the button, who thinks for a little bit of time and decides to call $350. I plan to double barrel on most turn cards. If he thinks the table is playing tight, I'm going to use that to my advantage and try to put money in, and maybe he'll make a hero fold. But when the turn card comes out, a queen pairing the board, it's a really bad card for me to continue to bluff. He's definitely going to be calling with all of his 10s now. He probably won't even fold a pair if I keep betting, so I think for a little bit of time and decide to check. The player on the button tanks for a little bit of time and decides to bet $550, and against most players, I would just let go of my ace high here, but if he perceives the table to be tight, he's going to be bluffing a lot more, and there's a lot of hands that I'm beating that he could be bluffing with. Hands like king jack for open-ended, 8-9 for open-ended, maybe jack 8 for a gut shot, possibly 8-6 suited for a gut shot. So against this active player, given the fact that I do have ace high, I'm beating all of his semi-bluffs. I'm drawing to a gut shot, nut straight with any king. I do have an overcard to a 10 if he has one of those. I decide to make the call for $550. A massive pot brewing here. The dealer collects the chips. We are looking for some improvement in the last card, which is the 4 of clubs. Doesn't help us at all. I decide to check it over to him, and he instantly checks back. I ask him if he has anything, and he says he has a 7. He shows 7-8 offsuit, which is going to beat our ace high. This guy completely owns us. I don't really like how I played this hand. I think I should be just check folding on the turn, but another pot not going our way so far this session. A little steamed up from that last hand. The active player who just owned me with 7-8 offsuit makes it $35. I have king jack suited next to act and decide to 3-bet big here. I make it $150. I end up getting 2 cold callers and the initial razor calls as well, so at least the game is good. Going 4 ways to the flop, which we totally miss. It comes out ace high. We end up checking back this flop. The turn card is an ace, the early position player bets, and the initial razor calls, and I just fold. I haven't won a single hand since I sat down, so I end up adding on for another $2,000. We do end up changing the game to 5-10 to an optional $20 straddle under the gun. As you guys can see, there is a ton of money on this table, and the action is going to heat up. While I was taking this B-roll footage, you can see there's a huge pot brewing between seat number 2 and seat number 4. Seat number 4 goes all in on the river, the guy in the Texas Card House shirt, for over $3,000. Seat number 2 tank folds. Seat number 4 shows jack 10 offsuit for a busted open-ended straight draw. He bluffed over $3,000 on the river. Just a little foreshadowing, but this information is definitely going to come into play here in the future. Playing 5-10 now, there's an early position raise to $35. I have pocket queens and 3-bet to $125, and my opponent makes a call. Heads up to the flop of 10-10-7 2 clubs. He checks it over to me. I put out a C-bet, and he folds. Just a few hands later, we look down at the ladies again. There's a raise to $65 over a limp. I 3-bet next to act to $215. Folds all the way back around to the initial raiser, who unfortunately lets his cards go. We take down this pot. Sticking with the trend of premium hands, we're in under the gun +2 position with pocket jimmies. Black jacks here, raise it up to $40. We end up getting 1 caller from middle position, going heads up to the flop of queen, 4, jack, 2 diamonds, floppy middle set. I put out a bet and he pretty quickly makes a call. Let's win a big pot here with our set of jacks going to the turn, which is the 7 of diamonds. Not the best card, brings in the flush. I think I can continue to bet here to get value from all Queen X hands. If my opponent does raise me, I'm pretty sure I have the odds to call here with a set. So I start with a bet of $130. He thinks for a little bit of time and decides to give up, gives his cards back to the dealer. We do end up taking down another pot, a small pot, but we are going in the right direction. This is anything but a boring session when we look down at another premium pocket jacks, the red variety this time. There's an under the gun limp for $10. I raise to $50 and he ends up making the call. So heads up to a flop of king, deuce, deuce, rainbow on this super dry board. I think a down bet is good here. Trying to get him to call with all of his ace high and his weaker pocket pairs. I bet $30 and unfortunately no more action here with pocket jacks. He makes the fold. I used a little foreshadowing here with seat number 4 going all in with a stone cold bluff of jack high. He is going to be the main villain in this hand. When he raises it up to $60 under the gun, there's 2 callers. I have ace jack suited on the button. I think I could be 3-betting here, but given the fact that I am last to act, I decided to just make the call. Right after I call $60, another player at the table asks seat number 4, did he really mean to raise to $60? Given the fact that there's no straddle on, he ended up raising 6x. He then told us that he thought there was a straddle and that it was a misclick, so I kind of have to keep that in mind here. It's a little odd, but we end up going 4 ways to the flop of jack, 4, deuce, 2 diamonds. We end up flopping top pair, top kicker. Initial raiser, seat number 4 checks. The cutoff player, who was the active player who totally owned us, 7-8 offsuit, our second hand of the night, bets $100. I think I could be raising here with my top pair, top kicker, but this time I decide to make the call, and the action is over on the initial raiser. Seat number 4, who decides to put in a check raise. He re-raises here to $375. The action does fold back over to me on the button. I have top pair, top kicker against a pretty active, aggressive player who just bluffed about an hour ago, so I don't think I can fold my top pair, top kicker here, but I'm trying to think of what hands he could be doing this with. He can have some over pairs like queens, kings, and aces. He could possibly have the last combination of pocket jacks. I don't expect him to ever have a hand like jack 4 suited or jack deuce suited, given the fact that he raised under the gun to $60. I don't really expect him to have pocket 4s or pocket deuces here. I don't think he's going to be raising under the gun in a tough 9-handed game with those small pocket pairs, so I put him on an overpair or possibly a big combo draw like ace 5 of diamonds or ace 3 of diamonds for a gut shot and the nut flush draw, so I'm not going to fold my jack just yet. I want to see a turn. I end up making the call. I'm not accusing this guy of angling, but I have seen in the past players raising huge from early position with hands like aces and kings and then pretending like they misclick to under-rep their hands, so it's definitely a possibility he can have aces and kings here with a monster. Going to the turn, which is the 7 of clubs, now bringing 2 flush draws, and my opponent in seat number 4 does not slow down. He continues to bet here, and he bets big, $850. This is a super tricky spot here. My opponent check raised to flop and then bet $850 on the turn. Against a very tight player, I would just be making the fold here. But against this player, I feel like he can be bluffing here. Semi-bluffing with hands like ace-king of diamonds, ace-5 of diamonds, ace-3 of diamonds. If I put him on a big combo draw, that means that if I call the turn, I basically have to call off any river that isn't a diamond or possibly an overcard like a queen or a king. So I make the decision now that I'm going to call the turn and then call off on any non-scare card river. A massive pot is brewing here, almost $3,000. My adrenaline is pumping. My heart is beating through my chest. Going to the river, which is the Jack of Hearts, giving us trips. One of the best cards in the deck. The front door flush misses, and now we improve to beat hands like queens, kings, and aces. Finally, after being down over $2,000, we make a big hand. The action is now on seat number 4. That's so nasty.
Wow. That's pretty sick, man. I folded ace jack too, by the way. You folded sick? Yeah. Hey, you on the flop.
Seat number 4 goes all in for $3,200 on the river. We make the snap call with our trips with an ace kicker, and he shows us the bad news. Pocket 4s for a full house. He flopped a set. We rivered trips. This is one of the biggest coolers I've experienced here in Dallas. A huge bad beat, a massive pot going in the other direction. Before this hand started, we were down almost $2,000. I definitely thought I was going to be winning a massive pot, and then he showed me the bad news. A huge cooler. We end up reaching into our bag to pay this guy off with chips that we have in our bag so that we can keep the chips on the table. This is an awful session, probably down over $6,000 now. Gonna have to take a break, try to get my mind in a little bit better of a spot before I play any more hands. I come back after a 10-minute break and do pick up some good playable hands, but I just cannot win a pot. I'm either missing the flop, getting 3-bet or 4-bet pre-flop. The action at the 5-10 game definitely is not as good, so I decide to switch tables and move over to a 2-5 game. Even though I am dropping down in stakes, it looks like this 2-5 game is full of action and full of some recreational players, so I think I can get some of my money back here if I can run well. The first hand we play, we're an under the gun +1 with pocket tens. There's an under the gun straddle to $20. I raise to $60, and only the under the gun straddler makes a call, so we're heads up to a 9 high board. Under the gun player checks. I put out a bet of $75, and he makes a call. The turn is the 8 of spades, kind of a scary card because it is a connecting card, but it does improve us to an open-ended straight draw as well as an overpair, so the under the gun player checks. I think I should continue to bet here, trying to get value from all 9x hands and flush draws. I put out a $200 bet. My opponent doesn't think for too long and matches my bet. When this under the gun player just calls my 200 bet on the turn, I don't expect him to have 2 pairs, straights, or sets. I think he would consider putting in a raise. So whenever he makes a snap call, I put him on a flush draw or just a single pair hand. So when the river comes off, a 4 of diamonds, a total brick, and he checks it over to me, I want to be betting big here. A polarizing sizing, trying to get called by all 1 pair hands. We are down almost $6,000 in the session. We're not going to get that back by betting small, so I bet big here. $500, 1 purple chip going in the middle. My opponent in the under the gun position thinks for about 20 seconds and decides to make the call. I show pocket tens, and they are good. He later told me he had a 9, so we end up getting 3 streets of value there, kind of winning some of our money back. Only about $5,000 more to go. In this next hand, the main villain is a guy who came up to me and told me that he's a big fan of the vlog. He really enjoys the content, but I don't know his play style. I don't know if he's a nit, if he's loose, if he likes to play a lot of hands, if he bluffs. I don't have any idea, but I end up getting 5, 6 of hearts in the hijack position. I raise to $25. The cutoff calls, the button calls, and then the main villain, the vlog watcher, ends up making the call in the big blind. We were down a lot of money, but we did win a pretty sizable pot there with pocket tens. Our first hand at 2-5. Now we're going 4 ways to the flop with 5, 6 of hearts, which comes out 6, 6, 3, 2 diamonds, flopping trips. That is what I'm talking about. Let's get some of our money back. Let's get unstuck on the session. When it checks to me, I put out a smaller bet here of $50. Folds to the button, who is a very loose older man. He ends up making the call. The action is now over on the big blind player who introduced me that he's a fan of the vlog, and he decides to put in a raise. He raises here to $250. This is obviously a pretty great spot. We end up flopping trips. However, we're $5,000 deep here, which is extremely deep. I don't think a 3-bet on the flop here is great. I'll just fold out all of his worst hands and his bluffs. So I think the best play here is just to make the call and evaluate on the turn. Also, the player on the button is a very fishy player who could be drawing dead, who might come along as well, but he ends up folding, so we're going heads up to the turn. In the back of my mind, I am slightly concerned that in the big blind, he could have a better 6 than me, possibly ace-6 suited, maybe king-6 suited, or even pocket 3s for a full house, so I am going to tread a little bit lightly, especially when I'm running so bad in this session, losing a $9,000 pot just an hour ago. The turn card is the 9 of clubs, and my opponent continues to fire here, and he bets big, $600. When the big blind takes this line of check raise flop bet big on the turn, he can have some semi bluffs and he can also have some value hands. For his semi bluffs, they would include ace x of diamonds, king x of diamonds for a flush draw. He can have 4-5 for an open-ended straight draw. For his value hands, he can have all the 6s, ace 6 suited, king 6 suited, 6-8 suited, 6-9 suited. He can even have pocket 3s. So against that range, we are beating all of his bluffs, but we're losing to basically all of his value hands. I think a call is good here. Like I said on the flop, if we raise, it's hard to get called by a worse hand, and I think he'll just fold out all of his bluffs. Going to the last card in a huge pot at a 2-5 game, which is the Jack of Diamonds, bringing in that front door flush. A very bad card for me, and my opponent does not give up. The big blind bets $1,075, and we are in a nasty spot. We ended up flopping trips, and now the front door flush gets there, and our opponent bets over $1,000. I'm really not sure what to do here. I try to think of some hands that I'm beating, and I just can't really think of any hands. All of his bluffs got there. If he had a flush draw on the flop and check raised and bet the turn, now he made a flush on the river. It is possible that he's a fan of the vlog and he knows that I'm recording, so he could be making a huge, massive airball bluff here just trying to get on video, but not many people are willing to put in $1,000 with total air. I'm already down $5,000 on this session. I don't want to make the wrong decision and be down even more money. I feel like I'm beat here. I feel like he got there on the river. So I decide to make the fold. Should have called you. Can you put that hand in front?
I had to do one. Just one.
Yeah.
I'm going to have it every other time.
We end up folding our 6, giving him credit for a better hand, and he shows Queen 8 offsuit for total air. Yep, we got bluffed. Super tilting. If I would have made the right decision, I could have won a $4,000 pot there, but we do end up picking up King Queen of Diamonds. There's an under the gun straddle, folds to me on the button, and I raise to $35. Small blind calls, big blind calls, and the straddler calls, so going 4 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out a board of ace, jack, 10, rainbow. We flop this stone cold nuts, the best hand. All right, I can get behind that. I like it. I put out a small bet of $50 here, just praying to get called by someone. The small blind makes the call, and the other players end up folding. When the small blind calls pre-flop and then calls our flop bet, he can have some ace-x hands, possibly some 2 pairs or sets like ace-jack, ace-10, jack-10, or pocket-10. So when the turn card is a 3 of diamonds, we still have the nuts. I want to bet big. I want to make this pot huge, trying to get some of our money back. I settle on a bet of $225. I'm hoping this sizing looks a little bit bluffy and maybe I can get called down a little bit lighter. The small blind thinks for about 20 seconds and decides to put in the chips. He ends up making the call, so we're going to the river, which is the deuce of diamonds, improving us to a flush. I've been living and playing poker in Dallas for about a month now, and what I've noticed so far is players here do not like to fold, especially on the river. They want to see what they're up against. So when he checks to me, I decide to go big, $750 here with my king eye flush. The action is over on the small blind, who definitely does not look too comfortable. Looks like he's contemplating between a call or a fold. He ends up thinking for over a minute and ultimately decides to put in the call. We show King Queen of Diamonds for a flush, and it is good. This has got to be the swingiest session we've had here in Dallas. Ups and downs, losing some massive pots, winning some massive pots, but this time the chips are coming in our direction. Poker is just a crazy game. The emotional swings from hand to hand are just insane. I ended up losing a massive pot getting coolered, ace jack versus pocket 4s, coming over to this table, winning a big pot with pocket 10s, then getting bluffed, and then the very next hand flopping the nut straight and getting paid off. It's just crazy. The emotional swings are wild. Like people say, poker is a hard way to make an easy living. Moving right along to the last hand of the night, there's an under the gun mandatory $10 straddle now. I have pocket 9s in early position, raised to $35. The button, the guy who likes to watch our vlogs, who just bluffed us with queen high, makes the call. The big blind makes the call, and the straddler makes the call as well. So 4 ways to the flop, which comes out ace, 10, 6. I decide to check this one, and it checks all the way through. The turn card is pretty magical for our hand. It's the 9 of hearts. We end up making a set, and now the big blind with a shorter stack of around $500 puts out a bet. He makes it $110. The straddler folds, and I think I could go between a call and a raise here, and I think I can just call and try to under-rep my hand and potentially get all the money on the river. I call $110, and to my surprise, the button makes the call as well. So we're going 3 ways to the river with a set of 9s, which finally comes off a clean one for us. It's the 4 of clubs. The big blind continues to bet here. He makes it $140. I look over at his stack, and he has about $300 remaining, so this is when I'm going to put in a raise. I raise it up here to $525. The button quickly folds, and now the action's back on the big blind. If the big blind has an ace or 2 pair, he is most likely calling for his last $300. He goes into the tank and thinks for a while. My hand doesn't really make much sense. I didn't bet the flop, and then I just called the turn, and now I'm raising on a 4 of clubs river. Doesn't make much sense, so I'm hoping my opponent thinks I'm bluffing. He thinks for a while. Over a minute, he shows me ace queen for top pair queen kicker, so I feel like I'm going to get a call here, but he decides to let it go. He saves his $300. He makes a good fold. Another tilting spot. We got lucky on the turn, but it looks like we won the minimum. Against any other player in this Texas card room, we should have at least won another $300 more, but we were up against a 1 player who could find a fold there with ace queen. That is going to be it for the session. We played 8 hours. I am tired. I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage, and cashing out for the night. All right, guys, that is it for tonight's session. I've got my best friend Rogue here helping me out through the outro. I've been making vlogs now since February 2020, and I'm pretty sure this session was the wildest, the craziest, the swingiest session I've ever documented. From the very beginning, 3-betting nonstop, picking up premium hands, then ace jack versus pocket fours on a jack 4 deuce board, and then a jack on the river for us to lose over $4,000. Moved over to the 2-5 game, won some back there with pocket tens, got bluffed by queen high, flopped a straight with king queen of diamonds, won a big pot. Just a crazy night, up and down and up and down. Unfortunately, ended up losing $5,500 in this session, but I'm actually not that tilted. I feel like I played good poker. I didn't make any huge stupid bluffs, didn't make any really bad call downs. I wasn't playing bad pre-flop. I just ran bad and didn't win any big pots. But that's going to happen. This is what I signed up for when I wanted to play 5-10. High stakes poker for a living. Sometimes I'm going to have huge winning days. Sometimes I'm going to have huge losing days. And tonight, unfortunately, was one of those huge losing days. But if you guys have made it this whole way, throughout all the poker, through the outro, through talking with me and Rogue, I really appreciate you guys are the true fans watching the entire video. I really definitely appreciate you guys. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. Please comment down below, helps grow the channel. And if you haven't, please subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. And until next time, I'll see ya.